It seems like everyone is starting a podcast, so should you start one? That's the topic of this video in our series, How to Start a Podcast. Hi, I'm Mike Carruthers, founder of Perfect Your Podcast and host of the nationally syndicated radio program and podcast, Something You Should Know. Podcasting is exploding. More and more people are jumping in and starting podcasts. Some are attracting large audiences, and some are making real money. Others use podcasting as a way to communicate with customers and clients. So maybe you're wondering if you should start a podcast. Well, I've spent my entire career producing award-winning audio content for radio and podcasts, and I can tell you that podcasting is a great way to communicate. It's your voice going right into the heads of your listeners, customers, or clients. It's a very persuasive medium, and it can build your authority and credibility. But it can backfire on you if it's not done well. Like most things, producing and hosting a podcast takes skill. There's a learning curve to it. You know, what I often see is people who go out and they get the podcasting equipment, they get it all set up, and they learn how to use it, and then it's time to start creating the programs, and it's, okay, now what? Beginning podcasters typically find it's a little harder than they think. In my opinion, much of the podcast training online that I've seen is very tech-heavy. What microphone to buy, what software to use, how to get your podcast on iTunes. All that's important, but equipment is not what makes a great podcast. It's the content, the creativity, the production value. All of this takes time, and it has to be learned. Believe me, if you started a podcast right now and then looked back on it a year from now, you'd cringe. And that's okay, everyone does. But what that shows is it's easy to improve once you get started. Next, you need to ask yourself, is this the medium for you? You know, bloggers blog because they like to write. Podcasters podcast because they like to talk. They're good at getting their point across verbally. They enjoy speaking. If you're timid and soft-spoken, that's going to make it tough because timid and soft-spoken translates into dull and boring in a podcast. You have to be able to sound likable, enthusiastic, interesting, and comfortable because that's what people want to hear. It's hard to listen to somebody who sounds uncomfortable. You know that if you've ever watched someone give a speech who was really nervous. It's hard to listen to. Same thing with a podcast. It has to be a medium you're comfortable with. Now, you don't have to sound like a professional broadcaster, but you do have to sound like you belong. Thirdly, can you sustain your podcast? You have to have the material and the desire to produce podcasts regularly, at least once a week. Any less than that, and it's going to be hard to build the momentum to attract and maintain an audience. Personally, I think anyone can create a great podcast if you're patient and understand there's a learning curve. You learn how to use the medium of audio effectively and feel comfortable doing it. And you can sustain it over time because you have the resources, material, and desire to do it. That should give you some guidance in deciding if podcasting is right for you. Please check out my other podcast training videos in this series, How to Start a Podcast. I'm Mike Carruthers. For more great podcast training, go to the website perfectyourpodcast.com. Thanks for watching.